Good evening, dear students. So, our next property of transition metals, that is the catalytic properties, the 13th one. And also, here in this session, you have to study some of the catalysts in which the transition metals are coming, and also you have to study the names also for these catalysts. Okay, some common names will be there, and you have to study those common names. And these names sometimes it may be asked in the A part, or else it will be asked in your section C or in your essay part. Okay, or you can write in the essay part. So the first one, that is the Ziegler-Natta catalyst. You have heard of this Ziegler-Natta catalyst, isn't it? Ziegler-Natta catalyst, that is titanium chloride. Ziegler-Natta, Ziegler, Ziegler-Natta, Natta, Ziegler-Natta catalyst, that is titanium trichloride, TiCl3. Okay, see here, this catalyst, it is used in the manufacture of polythene. It is used in the manufacture of polythene. Then the next one, that is vanadium pentoxide, V2O5, vanadium pentoxide. It is used in the contact process. Contact process, that is the oxidation of, contact process is the oxidation of sulfur dioxide to sulfur trioxide. Sulfur dioxide, it is oxidized to sulfur trioxide in the presence of vanadium pentoxide. So the process, it is called as the contact process. So here sulfur dioxide is oxidized to sulfur dioxide, and again it is this contact process means it is the manufacture of sulfuric acid, isn't it? The contact process means it is the manufacture of sulfuric acid. So the purpose of this vanadium pentoxide is the oxidation of sulfur dioxide to sulfur trioxide. Okay, then the next one, that is iron. Iron, as you know, it is used in the Haber process. What do you mean by Haber process? Haber process means it is the manufacture of ammonia, isn't it? Manufacture of ammonia, the process is called as Haber process. So iron is used as the catalyst there. Used in the manufacture of ammonia. Okay, so Haber process. Then again manganese dioxide, MnO2. Manganese dioxide, it is used in the decomposition of KClO3, potassium chloride. It is used in the decomposition of KClO3, potassium chloride for potassium chloride decomposition, this MnO2, it is used. Then again platinum, it is again used in the contact process, that is contact process means manufacture of sulfuric acid, and also they are used for the oxidation of sulfur dioxide to sulfur trioxide. Again platinum is used. Platinum, so we can use platinum or vanadium pentoxide in the contact process. Then one more is there, that is palladium. Palladium used in the hydrogenation. Usually in organic chemistries this palladium is used in the hydrogenation, that is it is used in the reduction reactions, isn't it? So palladium, it is another catalyst used in the hydrogenation. So these are some of the transition elements, that is here titanium, it is a transition element, then vanadium, iron, manganese, then platinum, palladium. So these are the different catalysts which are used in the preparation, or which are used in the manufacture of some common compounds. Okay, so these are having some catalytic properties also. Then another one is Adams catalyst. Adams catalyst is platinum or platinum oxide. So platinum bar platinum oxide, it is called as Adams catalyst, ADAMS, Adams catalyst. Okay, so this Adams catalyst, it is also used in the reduction reactions. Then again ferric chloride, FeCl3. Ferric chloride, it is used in the it is used for the manufacture of carbon tetrachloride. Ferric chloride, it is used in the carbon tetrachloride manufacture. Okay, then another one is Fenton's reagent, and again Fenton's reagent means it is the combination of ferrosulfate as well as hydrogen peroxide. Ferrosulfate and hydrogen peroxide, the reagent, it is called as Fenton's reagent. Okay, FENTON''S, Fenton's reagent. So you see here, this Fenton's reagent, it is normally used in organic chemistry. It is used in the oxidation of alcohols and aldehydes. Okay, used in the oxidation of alcohols and aldehydes oxidation. Okay, then again nickel So nickel, same as the case of palladium. Nickel and palladium both are used for hydrogenation or used in the reduction processes. Okay. So these are some of the catalysts. So next one, that is the catalytic activity of transition elements. Hope you are clear with this. So next one, the catalytic activity. Catalytic activity of transition elements. How this catalyst acts in a reaction. Okay, so normally suppose two reactants A and B are the two reactants. So for this reaction a catalyst is used. These A and B are the reactants and a catalyst is used for this reaction. So what happens is that first of all these either one of the reactant or both the reactants, it will be combining with the catalyst. Okay. Sometimes it will be one of the reactants. Either A can form an intermediate with the catalyst or B can form an intermediate with catalyst. Okay. So an intermediate will be formed on during this reaction. Okay, so what happens is that A dot B dot, an intermediate is formed during the reaction, and after that what happens is that this will be broken, and what happens, A and B with the intermediate, it will be broken, and what happens, a product C will be formed. A product C will be formed and the catalyst will be regenerated. Okay, so here the catalyst will be regenerated after the reaction. So this is the activity of catalyst. Normally this catalyst will be combining with any one of the reactants, and usually based on the adsorption theory, what happens is that one of the not adsorption theory, it is the intermediate compound formation theory. Intermediate compound formation theory. That is, usually in catalysis two theories are there. That is, one is the intermediate compound formation theory and the second one, it is the adsorption theory. Okay, intermediate compound formation theory and the second one, that is the adsorption theory. So this intermediate compound formation theory, it is it explains the homogeneous catalysis. What do you mean by homogeneous catalysis? It means the reactants, both the reactants and the catalyst are in the same phase. Homo, that means they are in the same phase. And also this adsorption theory, it explains the mechanism for heterogeneous catalysis. Okay, heterogeneous means both the reactants and the catalyst both are in different phases. Okay, if the reactants and the catalyst are in different phases, then it is called as heterogeneous catalysis. And if the reactants and the catalyst, reactants I am writing it as RN. See, if the reactants and the catalyst are in same phase means they can be either in the solid form or in the liquid form or in the gaseous form. So if they are in the same phase, we can say it is called as a homogeneous catalysis. So the mechanism of homogeneous catalysis, it is explained by this intermediate compound formation theory. Okay. So this intermediate compound formation theory means one of the reactants, it will be combining with the catalyst to form an intermediate, or either both the reactants. Okay, and then this intermediate will be decomposing to give the product as well as the catalyst. Here the catalyst will be regenerated after the reaction. Okay, so that is what intermediate compound formation theory states. Then regarding the adsorption theory means one of them will be in the solid phase and one of them can be in the liquid or in the gaseous phase. So the solid phase, it will be acting as an adsorbent, and the gaseous phase, it will be adsorbed on the surface of the catalyst. So on the surface of the catalyst, the reactants will be adsorbed, and as a result what happens later on, this will be converted to products and finally the catalyst can be regenerated. So these are the two theories which are explaining the catalytic activities. Okay. So this is about the catalytic activity. It is very simple. Then the next property, that is the tendency to form complexes or complex formation of this transition elements. Complex formation of transition elements. So here this normally what do you mean by a complex? Complex means there will be a metal, and this metal, it will be surrounded by ligands, isn't it? Ligands either by a coordination, isn't it? A coordination site will be there, so this metals will be surrounded by ligands, and it can be normally 4 or 6 ligands will be there surrounding this metal ions, isn't it? And also this ligands, they are usually they are having a lone pair of electron, isn't it? They are having lone pair of electron, or they are having a negative charge usually. Okay, so what happens is that normally some of the ligands, some of the examples for the ligands are, you have studied in coordination chemistry, isn't it? That is carbon monoxide, then NO group, then NH3, then Cn minus, then Cl minus, F minus, etc. These are some of the ligands which are surrounding the metal ions, isn't it? So these species, it will be having either a lone pair of electron, or it will be having a they will be having either a lone pair of electrons, or they can donate easily one negative, or they will be having a negative charge, isn't it? So they will be attaching to the metals, and also these metals, they are electron deficient species, isn't it? They will be having the vacant orbitals. Here in the case of transition elements, they are having the most of the elements, they are having vacant d orbitals, isn't it? They are having vacant d orbitals, and in this vacant d orbitals, the lone pair of electrons or the negatively charged species will be attaching, isn't it? The ligands will be attaching to these species. Okay, so normally for the complex formation, what happens is that normally this cobalt will be forming more complexes. Cobalt has got a tendency to form a large number of complexes than any other elements in the 3D series. Okay, cobalt, it is coming in the 3D series. So cobalt has a high tendency to form complexes with so many ligands. Okay, so in your textbook, one example is there, cobalt 3 plus. It will be reacting with 6 molecules of NH3 to form a species CO NH3 6 times 3 plus. This nomenclature of these coordination complexes you have studied, isn't it? So this is one of the cobalt complexes with ammonia, isn't it? Then again, the next comes iron, isn't it? Fe3 plus. It will be combining with 6 CN cyanide species, then forming FeCN 6 times 3 minus. Okay. So here, these are some of the complexes in which these metals, these transition elements, here the transition element is cobalt, here it is iron, isn't it? So they have got an ability to form complexes while comparing with that of S and P block. Okay, they can form very large number of complexes while comparing with those of S as well as P block complexes. And also this tendency to form complexes, it can be due to 2 reasons. Okay, the tendency to form complexes while comparing with that of S and P block, it can be of 2 reasons. One of the first reason is that the cations will be very small in size. The cations are very small in size, and also see if the cations are very small in size, what happens? They have effective nuclear charge, isn't it? The nucleus will be attracting the valence shell towards the center more strongly, isn't it? And as a result, so due to this smaller size, what happens? They have got a high nuclear charge, isn't it? They have got a high nuclear charge, and as a result of this high nuclear charge, what does it means? It means that they have got a very high charge density, isn't it? They have got a high positive charge. This metals will be having, since it is a cation, it has got high positive charge density, isn't it? Cations will be having positive charge, and then therefore it has got a high positive charge density. So this is the first reason for the tendency to form complexes. Usually they are smaller in size than the corresponding metals, and also they have got high nuclear charge, and as a result of the high nuclear charge, they have got a high charge density. And see, this high charge density means it can attract more strongly the lone pair of electrons coming from the ligand, isn't it? They can attract the lone pair of electrons from the molecules or ions more strongly, isn't it? So that is the reason for forming complexes. That is the first one. Then the second reason is that they have got vacant d orbitals, isn't it? This transition metals has got vacant d orbitals, and in this vacant orbitals, d orbitals, they can accept the lone pair of electrons coming from the ligands, isn't it? The ligands, it is having lone pair of electrons or a negative charge, or they are high electron density species, and the electrons coming from the ligands, they can be accommodated in the vacant d orbitals of the transition metal ions. Okay. So these are the two reasons for for this transition elements to form complexes. Okay. This also you have to study the reasons. So this is regarding the tendency to form complexes. Then the next property, that is the non-stoichiometry. Non-stoichiometry. Next property, that is the non-stoichiometry. See, normally this stoichiometry means the compounds, it will be having stoichiometry. Stoichiometry means they will be having, the compounds will be having a definite structure as well as they are having a definite proportion. That means they are in a definite ratio, definite structure and proportion. That is what we call as a stoichiometric compound. But here these transition metals, they are usually some of the compounds will be non-stoichiometric. That means non-stoichiometric means they have an indefinite structure. They have an indefinite structure and proportion. They have an indefinite structure and proportion. That is another characteristic property of transition element. So I will tell you an example. For example, iron oxide, FeO. See here, iron, it is only one, isn't it? One atom of iron and also one atom of oxygen, isn't it? That means FeO, it is in the ratio of 1:1. So here both of them, iron and oxygen, are in the same ratio with 1:1. But actually while doing the chemical analysis, it is found that this iron, it is ranging from 0.940 to Fe 0.840. That means iron, it is in the ratio not equal to 1. It is sharply ranging from 0.84 to 0.94. That is not up to 1. Okay. So oxygen, it is 1, but iron, it is nearing to 1. Iron, the ratio of iron, it is 0.94 to 0.840. So that means we can represent this iron, that is, it is not absolutely 1, a whole number. It is not a whole number, isn't it? So it is ranging from 0.84 to 0.94. So in such type of compounds, we can denote it as FeO, and above that compound we can draw a line like this. Okay, so this structure or this line represents that particular compound, it is a non-stoichiometric compound. Okay, there are so many compounds just like this having an indefinite ratio or indefinite structure and proportion, or non-stoichiometric compound. And also usually this vanadium and also selenium, they are forming compounds. And also this selenium, the ratio, it will be varying from selenium 0.98 to selenium 2. Okay, that is selenium, it will be varying from 0.98 to 2. Like that it goes on. So some compounds will be like this. Vanadium, selenium, we can write it as, this is a non-stoichiometric compound since it is denoted by this line. Okay, so we can write the compound is vanadium, selenium 0.98 to vanadium, selenium 1.2. This is one ratio of vanadium, selenium compound. Then another one, V2SE3. It is also a non-stoichiometric compound. Here vanadium, selenium, it is from 1.2, it's varying up to 1.6. Vanadium, selenium 1.6. Okay. Then another ratio, it is V2SE4, a non-stoichiometric one. Then we can write the compound as selenium varies from 1.6 to selenium 2. Okay. So like this, the compounds, the stoichiometric compounds will be there in the case of transition elements. Okay, so this non-stoichiometry, two reasons are there for the non-stoichiometric compounds. That is, the first one, it can be due to the variable valency of the transition elements. We have seen so many oxidation states or so many valencies or varying valencies, that is ranging from +2 to +6 or +7. We had seen the oxidation states or the valencies are there, isn't it? So the first reason for this non-stoichiometry, it can be due to the variable valency, and also the second reason, it can be due to the defects in the solid structure. It can be due to the defects in the solid structure. Okay, so these can be the two reasons for the non-stoichiometry of these compounds. Hope you are clear with this. So this is so 15 points are there regarding the properties. Sometimes an essay will be asked asking the general characteristics of transition elements. So if an essay is asked, you can write it so neatly. And also I had told you some important topics also in this essay part. Okay, for 4-mark question you have to prepare. That means regarding the color, then magnetic moments, they are all very important. So you have to study that also for 4-mark question. Okay, so be prepared with the general characteristics of transition elements. It is very important. So next one, that is the comparison of 3D, 4D and 5D transition series. Okay, comparison of 3D, 4D and 5D transition series. And first one we have to compare, that is the size of the transition elements. See here, 3D, the order it will be like this: 3D, 4D and 5D. So as we had studied earlier, this 3D, it is small while comparing with the 4D, isn't it? While comparing with 4D and 5D, 3D series will be smaller one, isn't it? And again, the 4D as well as the 5D series, they are almost similar. They are having almost same size, and also this same size, it is due to lanthanide contraction. Okay, the same size of the 4D and 5D, it is due to the lanthanide contraction that we have to study later in the lanthanide series. Okay, so here the reason for the similar size for 4D and 5D, it is due to the lanthanide contraction. There the atomic radii of the elements will also be similar. Atomic radii is almost the same for the 4D as well as the 5D series. So this is regarding the size. So comparing these 3D will be having the smaller size, 4D and 5D similar size due to lanthanide contraction. Then the next comparison is regarding the magnetic properties of the 3D, 4D and 5D series. Okay, so here we have seen these transition elements, they have got a d orbital, isn't it? They have got a d orbital, and also there is a tendency to form octahedral complexes for this transition elements, isn't it? They have got a tendency to form an octahedral complexes. So what happens is that this d orbital, it can be split into two categories. What are they? The T2G and the EG levels, isn't it? Two levels are there, T2G as well as the EG levels. T2G means it is a triplet state, isn't it? Here it is a doublet, isn't it? T2G, not triplet and doublet, it is having 3 orbitals. Here EG level, it has got 2 orbitals, isn't it? So what happens is that in the case of a 3D series, while we are considering the case of a 3D series, suppose a strong field ligand is approaching the metal. Okay, suppose a strong field ligand is approaching a metal in the 3D series. For example, ammonia, it is a strong field ligand. Suppose if it is approaching this metal, what happens is that there is a large energy difference between this T2G and EG levels. Okay, there is a large energy difference between these two levels, T2G and EG levels. So what happens is that the electrons suppose if the d level, it is having, this is the d orbital, 1 2 3 4 5. If the d orbital is having 5 or 6 electrons, what happens is that this triplet, this T2G orbital, it can accommodate how many? The pairing of electrons takes place in the T2G. Okay, so here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so here there is a large energy difference between the T2G and EG. So at first the 6 electrons, suppose this d orbital it is having 10 electrons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 electrons. Okay, so the 6 electrons at first it will be coming to the T2G orbital. That means here itself pairing takes place. Then only the remaining electrons will be going to the EG level. Okay, so here 6, the remaining 2 will be going to the EG level. Okay, so here itself pairing takes place if a strong field ligand is approaching, because while a strong field ligand is approaching, there will be a large energy difference between the T2G and EG. So here pairing of electrons takes place at the T2G level itself. So we can say such type of complexes as a spin paired or a low spin complex. So such type of complexes we can call it as a spin paired or low spin complexes. So that is the first case, that is if a strong field ligand is approaching, a low spin complex will be formed. Then again, if a weak field ligand is approaching to the metal, if a weak field ligand is approaching the metal, for example water molecule, it is a weak field ligand. If it is approaching the metal, what happens is that, and here in the d orbitals just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 8 electrons are there. So what happens is that this d orbital, it will be split into T2G and EG. T2G and EG. So here, since a weak field ligand is approaching here, what happens? The energy difference between these T2G and EG will be very small. Okay, this is again a large gap, isn't it? So here, the energy difference, while comparing the first one, the energy difference between these two, it is very small. Okay, so what happens is that electrons will be, first the electrons will be moving to the T2G, 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5. Okay, then only pairing takes place. So at first it will be equally spread between T2G and the EG levels. Okay, the electrons will be entering into both T2G and EG levels, 1 electron each. Then after that only, after partially filled, what happens? It will be, there will be pairing takes place. Only after the partial filling of electrons, the pairing will be taking place. So at first all the 2 levels are partially filled, then only pairing takes place. So here such type of complexes we can call it as a spin-free complex, or a high spin complex. Okay, a spin-free complex or a high spin complex. So these are the two details while considering the case of magnetism. That means while a strong field ligand is approaching, what happens? The energy difference is too large. So what happens? A spin paired or pairing takes place at the T2G level. Then only electrons will be moving to the EG level. So pairing takes place. Therefore, we can call it as a spin paired or low spin complex. And also, while a weak field ligand is approaching the metal, first of all, the 2 levels, that is the T2G as well as the EG levels, are partially filled. Then only pairing takes place. So we can call it as a spin-free complex or a high spin complex. Okay. So this is very important. This also you have to study carefully. Don't get confused between the low spin as well as the high spin. Low spin occurs during strong field ligand approach. Okay. And a high spin complex occurs while a weak field ligand approach. And also in general we can say that in the case of a 3D series, the high spin or a low spin complex, it depends upon the strength of the ligand. It depends on the strength of the ligand in the case of a 3D series. So it depends on the strength of the ligand whether a high spin or a low spin complex is forming. Okay, so that is one point. And in the case of 4D and 5D series, usually they have a tendency to form low spin complexes. Okay. Then the next is regarding the magnetic moment. See, in the case of 3D series, the magnetic moment we can calculate. We had seen a formula, isn't it? That is, magnetic moment is equal to square root of n into n plus 2. That is the formula for calculating the magnetic moment. And also in the case of the 3D series, the magnetic moments can be calculated by using this formula, square root of n into n plus 2, where n is the number of unpaired electrons, isn't it? But this is not possible in the case of 4D as well as 5D series. The magnetic moments cannot be calculated by using this formula or by using the number of unpaired electrons. So we cannot apply this formula for 4D as well as 5D series. Only for 3D series, then using the number of unpaired electrons, we can calculate the magnetic moment, but not in the case of 4D as well as 5D series. Then again, one more title given in your textbook, that is the abundance, regarding the abundance of the transition elements. See, normally this 3D series, you just read this one. The 3D series, it is about 6.79, something like that. 6.79% of the Earth's crust, it is available in the case of 3D. But in the case of 4D and 5D series, they are less abundant while comparing with that of the 3D. That also, that point you just for your namesake, for the knowledge. Okay, 4D and 5D are less abundant while comparing with that of the 3D series. Okay, then regarding the formation of complexes, usually complexes normally they have got a coordination number. It can be 4 or a coordination number 6. Isn't it? In general, we are saying a coordination number 4 and coordination number 6. Here the transition elements, usually they have got a coordination number 6. Common coordination number is 6. Okay, their common coordination number, it is 6 for transition elements. And also for coordination number 6, what about the geometry? The structure will be octahedral, isn't it? The structure will be octahedral. And also in the case of coordination number 4, it is less common while comparing with that of the other one. Coordination number 4 is less common. And also for coordination number 4, the geometry will be tetrahedral or square planar, isn't it? These are the two geometries followed in the case of 4. So 4 and 6, these 2 points also you have to note. Then regarding the stability of the oxidation states. Stability, usually the +2 and +3 oxidation states are more common regarding while comparing with the transition series. For 3D, it is having +2 and +3 oxidation states in common. Okay, then but in the case of 4D and 5D, these +2 and +3 are less common. +2, +3, they are less common. Okay, this is common for 3D. Common for 3D, but for 4D and 5D, it is less common. And also this 3D series, it is forming a very large number of complexes, that is chromium CrCl6 3-. It is a stable complex for 3D series. Like that, so many complexes are there for 3D. Okay. Then the next point, that is the metal bonding and metal bonding and the cluster compounds. Metal bonding and cluster compounds. These cluster compounds, it will be asked in A part or section B. For 2 mark question, it can be asked what is a cluster compound. Okay, section B. For 2 mark question, it can be asked. See, this cluster compounds means, suppose A metals, it will be bonded with some other atoms, or it can be bonded, it can form a group with 3 or 6 metal ions bonded together. Okay, sometimes 3 or 6 metals are bonded together to form a cluster. And also these metal atoms, it will be arranged at the corners of an octahedron. Sorry. They can be arranged at the corners of an octahedron. So metal clusters means number of that means 3 or 6 metals can be joined together, or it can form a group and it will be arranged at the corners of an octahedron. So such type of compounds we can call it as a cluster compounds. Okay, and also usually the compounds for elements like niobium, then molybdenum, then tantalum, Ta, tantalum, then tungsten, W, then rhenium, these compounds, it can form cluster compounds. Okay, so that means cluster means it can form a group. Cluster, just the word meaning itself, it can form a group. So in that group there can be the metals, and the metal number it can be 3 or 6. Okay, for example, niobium Nb6 Cl12 2 plus, it is a cluster compound. See the number of metals there, 6 niobium are there, isn't it? Similarly, tantalum Ta6 Cl12 2 plus, this is another cluster compound. Here 6 tantalum atoms are there, isn't it? So this 6 metal atoms, they are arranged in a cluster, and also they will be at the corners of an octahedron. Okay, and also this halogen atom or this chlorine atom, how many chlorine atoms are there? 12 chlorine atoms are there, and this 12 chlorine atoms, they will be bridging across the corners. Okay, so like that cluster compounds are there. And also it is these compounds are having a very beautiful geometry also. And also again another compound is there, ReCl3. Actually this ReCl3 compound, it is a trimeric of Re3Cl9. Okay, Re3Cl9, it is a multiple of 3, isn't it? So this ReCl3, it is a trimer of Re3Cl9. So such type of compounds, such beautiful compounds are there, cluster compounds. Okay, and also in the 3D series, so this is regarding the 4D and 5D series, we have seen these cluster compounds. So these cluster compounds are possible for 4D as well as the 5D series. Then regarding the 3D series, 3D series also some of the compounds can form this metal-metal bonding, but in 3D this metal-metal bonding, it is very rare. Only some compounds are there which is having metal-metal bonding. For example, Fe3CO12. This is a compound which is having metal bonding. That is, the structure it will be like this: Fe, then again another Fe. See here, metal bonding is there, Fe. Then again, how many carbonyl groups are there? 12 carbonyl groups are there. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again 1, 2, 3, 4. So CO, 8. CO. So this is an example for a metal bonding compound. This is not a cluster. So here metal bonding is there for Fe3CO12. Similarly, some of the compounds in 3D series, for example, manganese, it can form a carbonyl, that is Mn2CO10. This is another metal carbonyl complex. Then CO2, then CO8. This is cobalt, this is carbonyl, cobalt carbonate. Then Fe3CO12, then CO4CO12. So these are some of the compounds which are having metal bonding. So similarly, in the 4D and 5D series, it can form clusters. More complex structures are there for 4D and 5D series. Okay. So in our next session, we can see some of the compounds in the 3D series. You have to study in detail regarding the preparation of some compounds also. So in the next session, we can see titanium tetrachloride. Okay. Thank you for now. Bye.